wanted to come on and share my birth story. This baby M, we're calling him, was born on August 24th, 2023, and he actually came at 40 weeks on the dot. And I could not believe that he decided to come on his due date. My first baby was born at 40 weeks and 2 days, and then my second baby was born at 39 weeks and 3 days. So I did not know what to expect with this baby. Part of me thought that he would come earlier or just around the same time as my last baby, but part of me also thought maybe he'll decide to come on his own time, and he did. He just came on his due date, and it was exciting. Okay, so the birth story. A little bit of background if you have been around here for any amount of time. My first baby, I had a non-emergency cesarean section. It was a rather traumatic birth for me, and I've talked about it before, but something that I knew I wanted to do differently my second baby, and so I ended up having for my second baby, a hospital birth, and it was an unmedicated VBAC, and it was one of my most exciting days of my life. I loved meeting my first baby, of course, but having that VBAC and realizing I can have a baby and my body can do what it's supposed to do was a really exciting thing for me. So when we got pregnant with this baby, we knew we wanted to have a home birth, and I am gonna link all my other pregnancy videos for you guys in my first trimester, second trimester, third trimester updates. I talk a lot about our vasectomy reversal and how we ended up falling pregnant with this third baby after a big huge gap between my second and this one. So yeah, okay, so let's get into the birth. So on the morning of my due date, about 1 a.m., I woke up and I was feeling very crampy. And the past few nights before that, I had been feeling very crampy, like period cramps, and I would think, okay, like this might be it. But it wasn't like prodromal labor. It wasn't anything really intense. And so I knew it wasn't time. But so when I woke up on my due date at 1, I was thinking, okay, like it's time, we're gonna have a baby. But then my contractions were pretty sporadic, so I tried to get some rest. I texted my midwife. I let her know, hey, I might be in labor, but I'm not sure. And fortunately enough, it was around 2:30 and she was awake. She'd been reading a book and she got lost in her book, and so she said to me, try to lay down and get some rest. So I did. And when I first found out I was having like somewhat small surges, I stood up and my whole house was sleeping, and I kind of was just walking around and not really doing anything, just trying to figure out what I should do with my life. I had a whole labor to-do list that I needed to get done, and I ended up just kind of pacing. And then I finally laid down and everything slowed down. So I figured, okay, maybe it's not labor. So I slept, but then I still would have a surge or two every couple hours. And they were definitely ones that I could feel were like pre-labor surges. So I wake up around 5 a.m. and I say to my husband, who's getting ready for work at the time, I'm definitely in labor. And so he kind of looked at me and he goes, you sure? And I'm like, yes, definitely labor. And so he was very excited. He had to work that day, but he had some calls around 7:30, and so he still did those, and I told him it's fine, like it's, you know, it'll be a little while. And so I walked around my house. I did a lot of preparation. I worked through my labor to-do list. I got my kids breakfast. I pulled out a bunch of freezer meals to defrost that we would need over the next few days. I went through my birth kit again for like a third time just to look through the checklist and make sure it was ready. Around 9 o'clock, I remember saying to my husband, okay, I think I need to get in the tub. Like, I'm definitely having surges this entire time, but I wasn't timing them. And he kept asking me, I think you need to time these, like they seem really close together. And I was like, no, it's fine. I'm fine, like I can talk through it, so it's okay. And so I kept going, and I had him clean our bathtub. We were going to use a birth tub, and then we decided to use our own big, huge jacuzzi bathtub instead. It was just easier, and honestly, I don't think I would have had time to blow up the birth tub anyway, so it is a good thing that I decided to clean it out. We disinfected it with some peroxide and some hot water, and he scrubbed it for me. And so once I got in the tub, so I told my girls, when they came upstairs to see me, I was definitely having surges, and they said to me, like, "Mommy, are you okay?" And I said, "I think I'm gonna have the baby today." And they were so excited. They're 8 and 5, and they've just been waiting to be big sisters. And so I told them, "I'm pretty sure it's gonna happen today. Are you excited?" And they were. And so my grandmother was here to care for my daughters, and they actually were on a walk while I had the baby. And then they played outside for most of the day. So they weren't around, but it was better because my daughters are very empathetic, and I don't feel like they would have been able to watch me make some of the noises or be in some of the what looked like pain without being very emotional. So I'm glad that they were able to come in right after the birth, but they didn't have to witness it. And I gave them the option. I said they could if they wanted to, but they both decided they wanted to spend time with their grandmother instead, and I was okay with that. So anyway, I get in the tub and I start timing my contractions. I'm listening to my Christian hypnobirthing playlist, and I'm just really in the zone now. I would say it's probably active labor at this point. Contractions were 4 to 5 minutes apart once I started timing them. And then things escalated really quickly after that. He was born at 12:18 p.m. and I got in the tub around 9 or 10. And I don't remember when I texted my midwife to let her know to come. I want to say it was like 11:30. Like, it was pretty close to when I actually ended up pushing him out. She got there maybe an hour before. Luckily she lives close, but I did this with my second birth. I didn't feel like it was unmanageable, I guess. And so I didn't feel like I was going to give birth anytime soon. It was just still really manageable. Definitely was breathing through everything. I had my Christian hypnobirthing tracks playing, and I'm just literally like, my eyes were closed the entire time. We have a beautiful view out our like bathtub window, and I like planned on looking out at that as I was, you know, surging and giving birth, and my eyes were just completely closed. Everything was dark, and that's just where I went to be inward when I was dealing with all of those surges. So once I started timing the contractions, and they were consistently 3 minutes apart, 1 minute long, I started vocalizing, and that's when my husband said to me, "Call the midwife." And so I texted her and I said, "I'm definitely in labor. I'm vocalizing through contractions," smiley face. "I think it's time," or whatever. And so she said, "Okay, I'm on my way." She was there pretty quick after that, but I don't really remember a lot after that either. Like, I remember bits and pieces. I remember her showing up. She listened to baby with the Doppler. And then I just remember her needing to listen through a surge, and that was really uncomfortable. I was in the same position the entire time during labor. I was in the tub, and my legs were like, I was basically squatting for about 5 hours, just like while I was surging in the tub, and then while I gave birth. It was all the same position of squatting, and that's what felt the best. Being in the water was wonderful. I didn't have a water birth with my second in the hospital because I was a VBAC and they wouldn't let me. So being able to have a water birth this time around was so nice. So anyway, that was active labor. I knew it was time for transition when my back started to become, my back was on fire. It hurt so bad through each contraction. And I was really trying not to think about pain, though. I was really trying to get myself to another place where I wasn't in pain and just think about other things and distract myself, but it was getting really difficult to do that once I approached transition. The midwives were both, it was my midwife and then her assist. and they were both just kind of not frantically, but like quickly getting things ready. They would come check on me. My husband would be pouring warm water on my back through each surge, and I was just very vocal. I was vocalizing a ton. A sweet friend of mine recommended the Bridget Taylor YouTube channel, and I did check that out, and it really helped. I actually, the day before the day of labor, I watched a couple of her videos, and I'll never forget her breathing through a contraction and she said to keep your voice low. And so when I would have a contraction, I'd go, and I just sounded like a cow. And she even said, like, you should moo through contractions. And I'm like, okay. So I just did it. I did not care. So I was definitely mooing, and it did help manage the surges quite a bit. So I knew that I was approaching transition, though, when I started to cry. And I didn't cry in my last birth because I was just so in the zone, and I was really on the defense with my VBAC. And so with this time around, I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. And it wasn't like real crying, but it was like silent tears falling, just like, can I do this? And that's like a classic transition moment. I never wanted like pain meds. Sometimes people will ask for an epidural during transition, but I didn't think I wanted to transfer or anything. It was just like, okay, this hurts. So I definitely felt the tears, and then I knew, once I felt that fetal ejection reflex through each like subsequent contraction, I knew he was really close to being born. So the pushing stage, I am literally still squatting. I have the same water in there, and I didn't even think about the water temp. I was planning on checking the water temp, but there was no way it was happening for me. So I just remember sitting there. I just remember each surge that came, I would have this insane urge to push. And it didn't feel like a bowel movement. I don't know. Some people describe it as like a bowel movement feeling, but that's not what it felt like to me. It was more just like so much pressure. And I put my hand down to feel if he was like crowning, and I could feel my bag of waters, and it was still intact. And so when he first crowned, the bag of waters was still intact. And I was thinking in my head as I was pushing and trying to manage all the pain and stuff, I remember thinking, can she just like break this open? But then I realized it'll happen on its own. And so I just continued to push. It was probably 4 or 5 contractions before his head actually came out. And his little forehead was born first, and then his eyes and his face were still there. And so the next contraction, I could feel him finally come out, and it just was the best like relief ever. And then when his head was born, my bag of waters actually broke, and then the pushing after that was so easy, and it was just like, okay, 2 more pushes, he was out. I believe the time I started pushing from the time I stopped was about 20 minutes, and that's how it was with my second birth. So I didn't go as slow as I should have. I actually did tear, but it wasn't terrible. And the recovery has been pretty good too. I loved just getting out of my bathtub, snuggling my baby. When he was born, I just looked at him and I just couldn't believe, like, I have a son, you know, and my husband was there, of course, and I just looked up at him and was like, who is this, you know? But he was so sweet, and he looked just like my daughters when they were born. And so I brought him up to my chest when he was born. He had the cord around his little neck, but my midwife just quickly unwrapped it. Everything was fine. About 10 seconds after he was born, I was rubbing him, kissing him, and he cried a little cry, not a big scream. And then he just kind of looked up at me, and yeah, it was just the most beautiful moment right in my home, in my bathroom. So now every time I'm in there, I just look over, and that's where our son was born. But Yeah, it was such a great experience having a home birth, and I loved that my midwives cared so well for me. After the birth, I was sitting in the tub for a few minutes. He was covered up. We were doing skin to skin, and then I birthed the placenta fairly quickly, and I was able to walk over to my bed, and we just sat in my bed for a little while, probably about 45 minutes. My midwives were cleaning stuff up. And then after that, everything's kind of just, I was in newborn bliss, but my midwives brought me a plate of food. They cleaned everything up. They checked me to make sure I was okay. I was anemic during my pregnancy, and so they wanted to watch my bleeding, and that was ended up being all right. And so, yeah, overall, it was just such a beautiful birth. And after the baby was born, probably about an hour after, my daughters were able to come in and see him, and they got to meet him and just kiss him and love on him. And so it was just a lovely experience. But yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed listening to my birth story. I wanted to be one of those people that like actually took videos of the birth. I think that would be such a fun experience, just to take you alongside me as I labored and gave birth. But we're just a pretty private family, and so that's not really how we do YouTube. But nevertheless, I wanted to share my positive home birth experience with you because it was a very lovely experience, and I would absolutely do it again. So yeah, if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them in the comments below. Hopefully I covered everything. It's my first time telling the birth story, and I'm probably leaving a few things out, but I tried to cover all the different phases of labor. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'd love to chat through them. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.